Berlin has the most wonderful museums from many places I've been to, and I was deeply inspired by some of the people who went on to treasure hunts to find these artifacts. And the person I was with, she said something beautiful. She said, like, I wonder how these guys financed it. Like, and it was like one of the things that I struggle with right now is like sitting down with people and winning that internal battle that you need to win before you make an ask to somebody. Like emotions that come up for me are guilt, shame, the need for autonomy. You're also somebody where it was very important for you to be independent. How did you get over the hump of I want to do everything yourself and arriving at a conclusion that collaboration with others, both on the financing sector, is something that is necessary? Not sure if that question makes sense to you.
I I, I think it does. I so in the relatively early days of my business, I had I was first of all I was inspired by two books. One was Rich Dad Poor Dad, and the other one was The E-Myth. And from those books, I understood first of all the difference between owning a job and owning a business. Second of all, the importance of business systems. Now, my wife, she's from the US. She came here to meet me, or we met here, we married here, we settled here, and and that meant that we would visit her family regularly in the US. Now, the question is, how do you do that as a business owner? You know, and my father, every time I'd go overseas, I'd say, I'm going overseas. He says, how can you leave the business? How can you leave the business? And what happened was I turned that around, and one of the metrics of success in the business was my ability to not be there. Can I get away from the business? So first of all, you're going overseas and you're getting by anyway because, you know, email and whatever else you needed to do to run the business from far away back then, which was harder than it is now. But the other thing was that those were markers for me. When can I travel? Can I travel at certain, you know, how long can I get away for and do a trip to visit family in the US? Can I do it at any time? Can I do it for a week? Can I do it for 2 weeks? Can I do it at the busy time of the month? That was the first thing. The second thing, so the second thing was I was talking to a prospect and trying to sell him on our service. And he said to me, look, this is all very good, but what happens if you get hit by a bus? And I, in my head, I said, oh shit, he's right. And I think I said it to him too. I said, well, I'd be dead, but that could be a real issue. And I went home and I thought, well, I mean, now I'd use the term key person risk. I realized that this business is not a business because it's too dependent on me. And after that, I was more determined than ever to say, how can I build something that's a real business? The only way I can build it is if it doesn't need me. And there was another juncture in the business where I was looking for a growth path, and I had decided, so I was the architect of the business and I was the everything of the business. I was a key person. And I thought, how am I going to grow this business? I loved writing code and architecting things and building things. That was my comfort zone. But also, you know, a necessary evil is you've got to get customers. And I didn't like that so much, the getting customers part, because I'm not a salesperson. So I thought, okay, how am I going to grow this business? Well, I'll find somebody who's got a very good business development background, and I will invite them to partner in the business and they can help grow the business as an equity partner. So I went around to my network and I eventually stumbled across somebody who fit the perfect profile, you know, had previously exited a business, so he was a business owner, had a very strong sales and biz dev background. And we reached an agreement that he would spend 3 months in the business, just sitting there analyzing the business and understanding the industry. And after that, he would form a view as to how we might partner. At the end of 3 months, he said to me two things. He said, first of all, I don't want to be a partner in this business. I want to start a business that's a customer of this business, because he thought there's more money in that. Okay, fair enough. But the other thing he said was more important to me. The other thing he said was, you should not hire a biz dev person. The best biz dev person for the business is you. You should hire an operations manager. And that was one of the best pieces of advice I had in business, because I took that advice and I hired an operations manager, and I went out there out of my comfort zone, and I went out there selling and dredging up business. And I didn't like it. It didn't come naturally for me, but I did it and I was okay at it. But what it meant was that the business operationally started to have some management to run the day to day. And that operations manager, when they left, we hired the next one. She was more senior. And then the next one, she was operations manager, but then she became general manager. And then eventually we set up an advisory board and she became CEO, but not for very long because she wasn't good at that. But we had another CEO and that was a very good relationship. And all of this was this journey of turning the business into something that didn't need me, because it's only a business if it's worth something to somebody else. And if it's not worth anything without me, then it's not worth anything. It may generate cash, but it's not something that you can go away for a few months and do something else. And the other thing that I did in the business was I developed a recurring revenue business model, which was really important too. So, once I discovered that, which was with the help of a customer, or wannabe customer, I decided that my goal was to make more money while I was asleep than when I was awake. So essentially, to have the business be an engine of passive income, and again, not need me. And I sold the business just a few weeks ago. And by that time, I was only spending about 10% of my time in the business, and I was spending the rest of my time doing my family advisory and other projects. And I was having discussions with the owners, what are you going to do next? And I said, if you want me involved, I can be involved in some sort of advisory capacity. And then I get a phone call as we're reaching the conclusion of things. And I'm thinking, is he going to offer me some sort of role? And he said, just want to say it's been a pleasure meeting you. Thanks very much. And I said, oh, I didn't say it. I just, okay, that was very nice. And I thought afterwards, what? They don't want me. So I felt a little bit unwanted. And then I reflected on that and I thought, hang on, but this is exactly what my goal was. My goal was that I sold this business and this business did not need me anymore. Tick, win. That's exactly what I wanted to achieve, and I achieved it with that business. And as part of the exit, okay, now my time is free to do whatever else I want to do, or more of what I'm doing already. I've forgotten the actual question, but I think I might have answered it.
This was a beautiful transition, actually, and it's also interesting to see at what point it's not only the business not needing you, but what happens so you don't need the business anymore. Because for me, for instance, it's my life's work that I'm currently working on, and it's you know my story a little bit. We are building Alexandrian, which is like the new Alexandrian library to talk to your ancestors and to strive towards psychological mortality. But it has a cathartic effect on me also to deal with the grief, the imminent death of my father, and the idea of not being needed in this enterprise also leaves me without a function that gets me out of bed in the morning. How did you get over the fact of stepping away from it? Because I feel that's the theme that we covered earlier, leaving the Oedipal elements of your life behind. And I'm feeling a little bit like a father, where it's like you should at some point, the child should have its own journey rather than you living through your child, if that's a fair comparison to make.
See, here's the thing. In working with family business and with owner-led businesses, okay, I work with them on governance, on systematization, on succession. And I say to them over and over, if your business is everything, then what are you without your business? I say to them, starting a business is like having a child. When you start a business, think about the parallels. Having a child is an act of creation. Starting a business is an act of creation. When your child is in its infancy, it wakes you up at 3 o'clock in the morning screaming. When your business is in its infancy, it does the same. Eventually, your business grows up, but your biological children and your business children, so to speak, they compete for your attention. Your children compete for your attention. Your biological children and your business child competes for your attention. Your business eventually grows up and matures, hopefully, and it takes on a life of its own, hopefully. And at some point, you say, take your wings, go, fly. Your adult child leaves the home. Okay, and I've got adult children and they've left the home and married and started families of their own. And when that happens, you have mixed feelings. Your baby's going, your baby's all grown up. Where is this little child I carried? But at the same time, you're immensely happy for them because you see that you've done something right. You've raised them up to be good kids, and they're now adults and creating their own families, and that's family continuity, cultural continuity. And it's the same in business. You start a business. The business is an embodiment of your values, the team, the people you hire around you. You have a culture. But eventually, the nature of organizational culture is that, the whole monkey organizational culture thing where they train to not climb up the ladder and then they rotate the monkeys out and eventually none of the original monkeys are there, but the behavior still stays. That's the nature of organizational culture and any group culture. So it's like that. It's like that in a business. So I've been preaching this for years to clients, and now that I've recently exited this business, I've got to eat my own dog food. I've got to say, yeah, um, everything that I do with clients is rooted in my lived experience, whether it's a family member, as a business owner, all of these things. So if I'm not doing it myself, then how can I be telling others to do it?
I had a, since we are cursing, I lost my shit 2 months ago, a little bit in a way. I was like uh, trying to figure out how to finance Alexandrian, and I was frustrated by the conversation with venture capitalists I had. They wanted to have a 4-year exit plan. I'm like, I'm building something for eternity. How can you even like throw it into the room of thinking such manner? We need to safeguard the stars or ancestors forever. And I was really frustrated. I had a conversation with my father, and he always tells me the old stories. And he asked me the question, how do you think King Solomon financed the build of the temple? And that was very inspiring for me to think about that. Many of the greatest accomplishments of mankind have been financed in creative ways that are not based on that model. How would you answer this question of how do you build something that survives generation without taking the heroin money, so to say, of venture capitalists at this stage?